I think we're going to go ahead and get started and again, just cover the housekeeping items before we dive into the presentation. So again, I just want to thank you all for being here. Hopefully you can see my slide deck, at least the title slide, and know that you are at the Sidewalk program presentation being hosted by SEDCOR and Willamette Workforce Partnership. And if that doesn't sound like where you're supposed to be, then you are on the wrong meeting. You might want to jump to something else. Otherwise, thank you for being here. So Dean Craig and I will be walking you through today's presentation, talking about sort of the starts and recent successes of the program. In the process of the presentation, we are going to ask you to please drop any questions that you have in the chat. So if you open the chat box, you will see that there's some direction in there on how to do that, of course. As things come up, if we're able to answer them in real time, we will. Otherwise, we'll be reserving the majority of the questions until the end of the presentation. So make sure as they come up, you go ahead and drop them in there, because again, we might be able to answer them in real time. We expect today's presentation to really be about 50 minutes. You'll see that we've secured about an hour and a half of your time in this because we're hoping to not just be answering questions at the end of this, but to also maybe be walking through potential project conversations, right? So we're going to share with you what we have done. We've had quite a few of you approach us and ask us what could be done and have kind of a project in mind. So we want to be able to dig in on some of that deeper stuff. We might not be able to get to all of it today, but we really want to have some engaging conversation at the end of this. If we don't take all of that time, great. We all get a little bit more of our day back, but we wanted to make space for it. All right, Dean, anything else before we jump in? We ready to go?
I think we're ready to go.
Great. All right. So again, you are here today to learn about the Sidewalk program. This program was developed by Willamette Workforce Partnership and has been executed in support and partnership with SEDCOR. All right, so let's start with introductions. Dean, I'm going to toss this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Abisha. My name is Dean Craig. I am the Director of Business Services for Willamette Workforce Partnership. If you've never heard of Willamette Workforce Partnership, I'll give you just a snippet, 30,000-foot view of what we are and what we do. We are the Workforce Development Board for 4 counties, Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill, right here in the Willamette Valley. And we have kind of 2 sides of our house. If you've heard of Workforce Oregon, many people say the employment department, too much to our chagrin, because Workforce Oregon is the brand. That is one side of our house. So we have contracted staff that work in those centers with job seekers to help them be prepared to have the jobs and work in the jobs and the careers that are available in our region. The other side of the house where I tend to live is on the business side. We serve the business community by working with them to learn what their needs are, primarily workforce related, but not exclusively workforce related, to what's going to help them propel their business into the next levels, the next stage, the next expansion. And we do that oftentimes alongside of SEDCOR, working together to understand it and then building programs that help potential workers and even current workers can get those jobs and grow within those jobs. That's just a real snippet. We can get in more detail another time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Dean. And for those that I haven't met, my name is Abisha Stone. I am the Yamhill County Business Retention and Expansion Manager for SEDCOR. SEDCOR stands for Strategic Economic Development Corporation. We are the regional entity that serves Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. So you'll hear some alignment with Willamette Workforce Partnership in terms of the region that we serve. And our focus is supporting traded sector business development. So we work with businesses that make and sell a product on a larger domestic and international marketplace, which mostly for us, right, looks like manufacturing, agriculture. And then, of course, we have our trades skill partners like construction and things like that. We do that work as an independent 501c6 nonprofit organization on contract with the jurisdictions that we serve. And as you can imagine, as we're working with our business partners, the number one thing that they are always most concerned about is workforce. So we partner very closely with our partners like Willamette Workforce Partnership to identify and promote and sometimes develop programs that support workforce development for those partners. And that's what brings us here today. So, what is the Sidewalk program, right? First and foremost, it is a hands-on work experience for Opportunity Youth ages 16 to 24. This is how it was originally designed, and that was based off of some of the federal funding that Willamette Workforce Partnership has access to help youth that are not in school and not working to have access to job opportunities and work development, sort of hands-on experience, so that they can identify what their best path forward is. It's also a workforce development program for the construction industry, which is why we bring in those partners from the industry to say, how do we do this? Are we doing it right? And also, will you support us along the way? And ultimately, the goal is to provide community impact in this partnership. That's also a component that's required in order for this to all come together. And as we'll talk about, this is a picture that you're looking at right here is our actual recent project in the city of Carlton. These youth are getting work experience. They're learning how to work in the industry, and they're putting Sidewalk in their community. And it's pretty exciting. All right, so I'm going to ask Dean to jump back in to talk a little bit about the program background. This program actually started before I was with SEDCOR. So Dean is the subject matter expert, or at least our historian. Let's put it that way.
That's just because I'm old and been around a long time. Actually, it's interestingly enough, Abisha, it started before I was with Willamette Workforce Partnership as well. However, I was engaged in the program, and I'll explain how here in just a moment. The initial project started in 2008, like Abisha mentioned, excuse me, with an infusion of federal dollars for sort of make work programs when the economy was kind of on the skids. And one such project was the Ash Creek Trail in the city of Independence. We had this organization called the SEDCOR Construction Alliance that a bunch of contractors said, we need to teach people. We need to be teaching young people about our industry because we're aging out. And they were really struggling with that, and frankly, still are. And so this mud trail, a mile long in Independence, became kind of the focal point. We identified a contractor, our local youth provider in the area in Polk County, at that time called Halo, came together and said, yeah, we have youth that want to learn how to do construction work. We had a contract. We had a city that was super engaged. We'll talk more about what that looks like later. And we built this mile-long sidewalk. It's 8 feet wide and nearly a mile long for a walking path along the Ash Creek area. It's just such a wonderful thing to have happen, and to watch some of the youth that came out of that and now are in the profession, super cool. But the partners to make it happen were crucial. The city had to be there. Willamette Workforce Partnership had to be there with funding. Halo, as I mentioned, was youth service provider, so they wrangled up the kids. We had a contractor of record, and of course the Construction Alliance. You'll notice on the screen it says Personnel Source. That's where I worked at the time. I was the regional manager for Personnel Source, which is a staffing agency. So we actually employed all the kids in that staffing agency while they worked on this project. And the reason we did it that way was for real world experience. Every week they had to fill out their time card. They had to understand what either direct deposit was or a paper check, what to do with it. And some of these kids were as young as 16 years old. So they had some of them didn't ever even consider what a bank account was like or what taxes were, which was kind of eye-opening for a lot of them. They had to go through an interview process just like a real job. When it all was said and done, I don't remember the exact head count of how many students went with it, but it was nearly 20 that worked on the project altogether. And several of them did go into industry. One in particular is now an assistant superintendent for a large company in Portland, which is super, super cool.
Yeah. Now, can you talk a little bit about the residential project, Dean? Because I think the difference between the Ash Creek Trail project and the residential one is pretty significant.
It is. So when that funding went away, we couldn't continue it. at the same level. But the City of Independence was really, as was the youth provider, which had switched, by the way, to CSCs. They are our current provider, the Community Services Consortium. They wanted to continue it. And when I came on board here in 2018, I was very interested in bringing it back up. So talked to Sean Irvine at the City of Independence and the people at CSC, and they said, yeah, let's do it. Found a sidewalk right near City Hall and just made it all happen. Found a different contractor who was willing to work with us. And we did first about a block, a little over a block sidewalk in a high traffic area. And that impact was very, very probably more visible because right where a lot of traffic happens on the side street of a lot of traffic. So people saw it. They watched it happen. The mayor came down, city councilors came down, the police chief came down. And I think that element of it was really impactful for the kids because they recognized the community investment. That's pretty cool. So we did that one. Then, gosh, I think we did 3 more in subsequent seasons after that. So I don't know how many total blocks we did,
Yeah.
but primarily the residents, they're all residential, by the way, not commercial side area sidewalks, but all of the residents were like, this is phenomenal. They loved meeting the kids. A couple of them brought cookies out to the kids and the contractors, which was pretty neat to have it all come together. But I think the biggest impact was on a couple. One, the contractors that came by and watched it and had no idea that the kids were actually doing the work and how engaged with the work the kids actually were. And the kids themselves recognizing that this isn't as scary as I thought it was.
Yeah. And I think I remember, Dean, when I was talking to you and Sean about this project now a couple of years ago, that the Ash Creek Trail was laying completely new sidewalk, right? Because it was a
Correct.
new trail. When it came to the residential area, one of the things the city did was they kind of went through and did an evaluation,
Correct.
identified dangerous
Yep.
sidewalk, right? So
Yep.
sidewalk that maybe was popping up or had dropped, and so it wasn't traversable by folks that maybe needed needed to have a more stable platform. But there were also issues where those residents couldn't afford maybe to address it.
Right. Yeah. And in
So
most communities, the residents are responsible, financially responsible
exactly.
for it.
So in some instances, they had to tear out maybe sections of sidewalk and relay it. In other areas, they just did some grinding, right? Or
Yeah, a little
maybe
bit.
some filling or a few things like that. So the youth got exposure to a few different um, methods, right, of
Yeah.
applying or managing sidewalk. Is that correct?
That is spot on. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it was really unique in that way. Dean, can you, I think it's a good time now to kind of talk through, because the City of Independence was such a great partner, right?
Yeah,
The entity that has the project is such a vital partner. Can you share some of the ways the City of Independence showed up?
absolutely. And it was so generous and it made it happen. I think without the cities, the way they stepped up, it wouldn't have ever gotten off the ground. They initially said, well, we'll identify the spots, right? That was the first step. And then they said, well, I think we can probably waive and expedite the permitting process, waive the fees and
Mhm.
expedite the process to get it done quicker. And then they said, we have a dump site. So the spoils from old sidewalk that was taken out, we can receive that. And we can expedite inspections. Well, everything that needed to happen, the City of Independence stepped up or rolled up their sleeves and said, "We'll make this happen."
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
crucial.
that's pretty important. And we'll probably be reiterating that a few times here.
Several.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have questions about that, please get it in the chat. But we're going to go ahead and jump over to the next slide. But as Dean said, this really started in 2008, right? A couple projects in the City of Independence, and then the federal funding that supported it, because Willamette Workforce Partnership is a conduit for federal funding that supports workforce development. That funding went away. So the program kind of got backburnered for a while. Oh, sorry. There's a slide of the results. Here's pictures of the Independence projects. Yeah, so these are the youth actually. You'll see up in the right hand corner, they've got a saw. They're actually cutting out some sections of walkway that they're going to be laying sidewalk in. You'll see them actually pouring the sidewalk. This is a right to left progression. And then, of course, an actual picture of some beautiful finished residential sidewalk in the City of Independence.
All done by youth.
All done by youth. So now we're going to talk about, this project went away because the funding went away. So the project went on hiatus. And Dean and I both started in our current positions in 2018. We heard about the project and we were like, this is so cool. We would love to get it restarted. We started to get that underway, and then we had a pandemic, and that kind of got in the way of things kicking off. But in 2021, we did decide, hey, let's try to kick this back off, right? Like, we feel like we're at a good place with recovery from the pandemic. It might be nice for folks to have a project that we can feel good about. And we did. We engaged a community in the region, and then started trying to get things underway. This was a real learning opportunity for Dean and I, and that's why we put this slide in here, is that I think it's important to talk about the times that things don't work and what we learned from it, because that certainly influenced how we went forward afterward. So in 2021, we did secure a municipal partner, and we asked them to show up in some similar ways that the City of Independence did. And at the time, they were either unable to or unwilling to do that. So they were not able to expedite permitting. They were not able to waive fees. They were not able to prioritize inspection. They were not comfortable with the community engagement sort of component, seeking donations, seeking partnership, communicating with local businesses or residents about partnering in the project. They didn't have a level of comfort to do that. They did actually have a sidewalk matching grant program at the city. So if residents or businesses were required to replace their sidewalk, that there was a matching grant, but they already had that program at the city. It wasn't extremely utilized, but I thought it was a pretty strong program, the way that they had designed it. But because of what we realized as we tried to seek contractors of record to support the project, was that the unwillingness or inability of that municipal partner to show up in some of those other ways was really off-putting to the contractors. And not just emotionally off-putting. A lot of what they said to us was, if we're working with youth on a project that have never worked before, some of them have barriers to employment, it's going to slow us down. It's hard to do, right? It takes more time, it takes more energy, and we really need the city to be a good partner. We need them to be willing to prioritize inspection, for example, so that we can keep things moving and not kind of lose our shorts on this project, right? So we were not, with great deal of effort, not able to secure a contractor of record, and the project died. Dean, do you have more to add to that?
Well, no, but I just want to reiterate your point of that the contractor isn't going to make full grade on this.
Right.
Right. This project is everybody has some give in it, including the contractor. Yes, they're going to be whole, but probably not as completely whole as they would in a normal project. So the commitment by the municipality is crucially important for efficiencies so that they don't lose a lot of money on it.
Yeah. And so what Dean is saying is that there are a few entities that get a paycheck, right? That get paid for their time and effort in this project. The contractor of record, who has to be licensed and bonded, right? They are legally responsible for the quality of the product that is put in place. They do get paid. As Dean mentioned, they are often donating quite a bit of their time and resources, but we're trying to make them whole, right? At least. The youth get a paycheck. As Dean mentioned, when he worked at Personnel Source, they were employed by Personnel Source as a participant of the program through HALO, but they get a paycheck. And then also the project manager, right, gets compensated for their time managing the project. And the project manager can be seated at multiple entities, and we'll talk about that structure later, but those are the entities that need to be made whole in this process. So 2021, we learned, right? We learned how valuable, it's easy to think, okay, in the city of Independence, this project worked out, right? It was just sort of organic. They were figuring it out at the time. Hey, we can do this and we can do this. The city was really eager for the project. The partners were eager. I was a local contractor who said, this is cool. I love working with, high school kids and youth, and I've done it my whole career. And it just came together. When we tried to replicate it in 2021, we realized how important these particular components were, and we started sort of making the secret sauce ingredient list. In 2023, we attempted to relaunch it again. And this was actually in the city of Carlton. We did have full local support. The city showed up in an amazing way, but we could not find a contractor of record. We believe that it was entirely an economic issue at the time.
They were busy.
Contractors were extremely busy at that time. If you remember, folks were doing a lot of remodeling. There was a lot of building going on, and we could not compete with the projects that were on the table for them. Material shortages were happening. Cost of material was very high. Cost of labor was very high. And we realized that our project wasn't going to compete with the other projects that
With
were
the
in front of
federal
these
investment
contractors.
primarily.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So we took a little bit more time. We talked to more partners. We started to try to gain some more interest in other folks, and we said, we're going to come back to this. Well, in 2024, Shannon Bouquet, who's on the call, I believe, right, city manager for Carlton, said, Abisha, whatever happened to the sidewalk program? And I said, well, let's talk, right? So we brought Dean back to the table and we said, hey, let's try to do this again. And in 2025, the partners that are listed on this slide in front of you came together to make a project happen. And as you know, because we're doing this presentation, but you can see again on the slide here, this is the first stretch of sidewalk that was poured in the city of Carlton in 2025 through this project. So who were the partners? The partners were the city of Carlton, Willamette Workforce Partnership, in Yamhill County, YOUP, through the Chehalem Youth and Family Services department is actually the youth service provider. SEDCOR acted as project manager, and then Costin Border Contracting was our contractor of record, and they're based in Salem. All right, so how did the city of Carlton show up? In some pretty phenomenal ways, to be honest with you. So they said, yes, we will expedite permitting. We will waive permitting fees. We will prioritize inspection. They committed $24,000 to the project out of their own budget. They also secured 2 private monetary donations totaling $50,000. They secured a privately owned site for material storage. So as you imagine, we've got wood for setting of forms. We've got some tools and things. They were able to secure a privately owned site, a local residential site that said, yes, we're happy to let them store all that stuff in our back area. They also got a donation of a porta potty, which they put in that same storage area. So the youth had access to a restroom and they had their own site for storing material. They also embraced a civic engagement opportunity for the youth. So either in December or January, we're still working out details. We're going to be bringing some of the youth from the program to city council meeting to present about what their experience was, to have a chance to have civic engagement, to have a chance to share their journey, and to kind of close loop on this. They also embraced community messaging. So working really closely with the whole team to put together community messaging. They sent out emails, they sent out regular mail, they did signage, they made sure community was aware of what was going on. As you know, community members can get very inquisitive about projects in the community, especially when they involve youth. Also, I could put a lot more things on here, but their public works manager was physically on site many times, talking to the kids, talking to them about their experience working in public works, supporting our team, putting out candlesticks and sidewalk closure signs, and just, sort of all of the blockades that you need when you're closing sidewalk, and just did a phenomenal job of being a good partner on site. Dean, did I miss anything on the city of Carlton?
No,
There's
but I
so
think
much we
that
could say.
emphasizing the the community engagement and messaging is crucial. Right? I mean, the
Yeah.
city went above and beyond. They even knocked on doors when people hadn't responded, which
Yeah.
is it's necessary to for a
Yeah.
project like this.
Pretty phenomenal. I will say too, for those of you that are on here that work for a jurisdiction of any type, city or county, when we went to present about this right before we kicked it off to get the final approval from City Council, Dean and I went in together and did a presentation. There was a lot of people in the meeting that day because there was a pretty difficult conversation on the agenda for the city, and it was around water. I'm sure all of you are aware of difficult conversations around water. And when Dean and I left, we got all but a standing ovation. I mean, the community was extremely excited to hear about this project. It is pretty hard to not like this project, right?
I've had I've had countless conversations with
Yeah,
locals in Carlton about how excited the whole community has been about it. It's
yeah.
pretty.
It's a true public-private partnership with youth benefit, workforce development, and community benefit. So, and I'm assuming you know that, which is why you all are here today. All right. So, how else did everyone else show up? Willamette Workforce Partnership, like I said, they initially developed the program. So, they are the owner of the program, responsible essentially for the overall success. They are the conduit for this federal funding. So, in 2008, the funding that supported it went away. A new type of funding has come up. It's called a WIOIA, referred to as WIOA. I won't expand the acronym, but it's federal funding intended to support opportunity youth.
Right. That's how we pay
Um,
the youth to do the work.
exactly. That's where that funding comes from. Dean personally secured the wood donation, and Willamette Workforce Partnership served as the donation partner, uh, fiscal agent, essentially, right? So they are structured as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so they could serve in that entity or in that role, which was really helpful because, like I said, there were two monetary donors that were community members at that 50,000 combined level. They were able to make that donation through Willamette Workforce Partnership and benefit from that 501c3 status for that donation, right? So then that money went to Willamette Workforce Partnership, and then they paid the bills, right? They cut the checks to Cost and Border Contracting for the materials. They were able to essentially pay for the PPE, and all of the kids get outfitted with tools. So they get boots, they get a full tool set, right, with the tool belt and hammer and just kind of the basic stuff. I guess not a full set, but everything they would need to walk onto a construction site and get a job, right?
Yep.
So you,
And they get to keep those, by the way.
yep,
I think that's an important piece so they can take them with them and go find a real job and be ready to go to work.
yeah. So YOUP, like I said, if you're not familiar with them, they are the youth service program service provider in Yamhill County. So they were the ones that recruited the youth. They provide the engagement and support for the youth. For example, some of them don't drive or can't drive, so they provided transportation to the site. They also support them in maybe they need supports like finishing their GED, right, or finishing high school. They support them in pursuing that. Some of them need to get a driver's license. They support them in doing that. So they provide a lot of wraparound support. They also went and purchased, right, like picked up these things for the youth. So they got them outfitted with boots and the tools and all the things they needed. In this instance, they actually served as the employer of record for the youth. So Dean mentioned the Independence Project, Personnel Source, a separate entity served as the employer of record. In this instance, YOUP served as the employer of record. This is really important because the contractors are very unlikely to be willing to serve as the contractor of record because it's a short amount of time that they're employed by
Employer of
them.
record.
I'm sorry, the employer of record.
Sorry
Thank
to
you.
cut you off.
Yeah, they are, it's a short period of time. It's them taking on sort of an unknown and a lot of work to do that and a liability. So if it can go through YOUP, then, or some other entity, right, that's positioned well to do that, then it removes a lot of that burden from them. It also, as we have these like areas of separation, it prevents us from crossing a lot of these barriers of these areas of concern around municipal sourcing requirements, or, is this now a Davis-Bacon regulated job site? We really do keep it separate. Like, this is a nonprofit entity. This is a youth service program provider. These are the roles of the municipality. We want to structure those things very separately so that it's clear and it's understood, and we don't cross any of those lines that overcomplicate this thing. Hopefully that makes sense to y'all. They also, of course, on the back end provide skills assessment, career counseling, and then job placement. So they watch the youth during the process. Hey, do you like it? How did it go? And then if it looks like it's something these youth might pursue in the future, they help them with job placement. So just a little bit of work by you. Okay, so in this project in 2025, SEDCOR acted as the project manager. We were able to identify the contractor of record. We developed the marketing and communications materials that were sort of like more outward facing. So the city was working with the local communities. SEDCOR did more of the sort of, we built the signs, we made some flyers, we made sure that it was out on social media, right? We worked with Willamette Workforce Partnership to make sure folks were aware of the project. We also secured a site and rock donation, so both of those being a donation. Cost and border contracting, well, they served as the contractor of record. In addition to decreasing their own fee for service, they were able to secure decreased fee and donation from their subcontractors. So they subcontracted out an excavator,
Excavation
for example.
services. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the excavator donated some of their time. In doing so, because we have the 501c3 entity on board of Willamette Workforce Partnership, they're also able to take a donation benefit for that, right? So we give all these folks donation receipts. Feel free to pursue that if you'd like. It's kind of the Dean, do you have anything else to add about cost and border? Maybe.
Well, yeah, a little bit. I think that it's very important to have the right contractor at the table. Somebody who is patient with the youth because they don't know what they're doing. They're young and they're learning about jobs. For several of these youth, it was their very first opportunity to work. And so they didn't really understand, other than what they'd been taught by YOUP. In real world, it's different from sitting in a room talking about it than getting out there on a job site and doing it. And Willie and Alex were great, cost and borders were great at communicating with youth what the needs were and giving them instruction on why they were doing certain things. Why are forms set this way? Why is compacting done? Why do we have to dig this deep and not here and not over here? Just a variety of things. It was really educational for the youth to understand the viability of a sidewalk.
Yeah, good point. I see Jess with Molalla had put a question in the chat asking if this is something that can be introduced to Ant Farm, the youth hub. I'm not familiar with that program, that partner.
Nor am I.
But as we talk through this, I hope what you all are hearing is that the individual partners, right, are going to vary. They can most certainly change. It's how they show up at the table that matters, and also sometimes the structure of the entity so that we can ensure the funding model fits. But we're willing to explore any of those to help you sort out whether a certain project will fit or not. I also see some, I'm sure they're phenomenal. Thank goodness for these program partners that are good with youth.
Jess, I'd be happy to visit with you about that offline. I actually live in Molalla, so I'd be happy to chat about it and see what we can come up with.
Awesome. And we'll talk a little bit about ODOT projects as we go through here. All right, so this is how the partners showed up, right? This is kind of what their expectations were. I don't know how you're making that heart float up there, Jess, but
pretty cool.
I'm going to ask Noreen to show me how to do that later. That's kind of cool. Okay. So here's our youth. So what was the project, right? We're talking about this project in the city of Carlton. What was this project, Dean and Abisha? Well, these youth laid 800 plus lineal feet of sidewalk on the north side of Main Street. That was between 1st and 6th Streets. In many instances, right, it was also widening those walkways, right?
All
because
instances.
We're bringing it up to code, right? In each instance, was it, Dean?
Yes.
So it was really a patchwork of sidewalk along this space. There were some very new pieces of sidewalk that were fully up to code. There were some very old pieces of sidewalk that were definitely not up to code. And then there was some dirt trail. I mean, it was a little bit of absolutely everything, which was great because the youth got exposure to a little bit of absolutely everything. What they didn't do in this instance was any grinding or repair in that sense. It was tear out and infill.
But they
But you'll
did get
see,
to learn how to like raise a meter box where Willie's foot is. They had to raise that up to new grade, which was fascinating by them. They didn't know what that meant.
yeah. Yeah, and they also put in the ADA rumble strips, right?
Correct.
And so many of the youth didn't know what those were before. Like, what are those bumpy things, right? They didn't know what they were. And so they got to experience that. I think on this day, if I remember correctly, Willie, the gentleman in the blue shirt and jeans, kind of in the center picture, he's our contractor of record. He did a little class with the youth that day, and it was how do you use a tape measure?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you actually use a tape measure? What do those little lines mean, right? And remember when we learned fractions and things like that? Like, what does that mean? So this is our team. There were 5 youth on this project. Um, one of the youth was actually from the city of Carlton, which was
Hmm.
kind of fun because he was like, I'm working in my own community. The gal here in front standing with Willie, Emma, was she actually did the finish work on the first pour of concrete. So that's where you kind of smooth it out and make it look all beautiful. And it was like she had done it her whole life. I mean, just a
Loved it.
total pro, right? It was wonderful. But this is the first section of Sidewalk, and this is what these youth accomplished. So what was the project? Let's talk a little bit about the details. Installation timeline. The actual project itself started September 2nd. We started process before that with actual contract writing, getting the youth, all the things, but installation, right, was September 2nd through November 6th. The total project timeline, this is a hard one to really pin down for the city of Carlton because we started these conversations in 2023. So the city already committed to a lot of their partnership in 2023. We just had to get a recommitment in 2025. So when we look at when did we really restart the conversation, how long did it take? Because folks ask, right?
Yep.
Well, it can take as long as your municipality requires or your entity, if you're a nonprofit partner on the call here, it can take as long as you want it to, right? Or as long as you guys require it to. But in this instance, it was about March to November to have the conversations, to design the project, to get the donors, to get everything in place, and to get it done. We had 5 youth engaged, and there were 8 residential parcels impacted by the project. And the impact of increased safety, increased mobility, the visual, right, sort of the aesthetic impact is kind of immeasurable, but a pretty meaningful impact. And then I put here this best participant quote, and Dean and I chuckle about this because the News Register came out and interviewed the youth and did a lovely article in the News Register. I encourage you to look it up if you're interested. But Emma was quoted in here saying, "It's really a weird thing. As someone whose prefrontal cortex is not yet developed, I'm expected to make decisions for my future." And the reason I put this in here is because I think it's so thought-provoking
And real.
and real. Yeah, and we all have experienced this feeling, right? We were all young, and even those of us who aren't necessarily wouldn't call ourselves young anymore, but still consider what our future might look like. It's hard to know, what am I going to like? What am I going to want to
Yeah.
do? And some of these youth are thinking, why do I continue going to school if I don't know what I want to do? Um, the, and that's why projects like this are so valuable because it gives them a chance to actually work in a project, in an environment that could look like a day to day, and ask themselves whether or not they'd want to do that. Or what component of this do I like? So,
Right.
like I said, Emma was really good at the finish work, but she does not want to do this work in the future.
Nope.
But she was very intrigued by the scheduling, by material delivery. Dean and I were talking, like, could totally see her being in the office, being a purchasing manager. You could see her being a project manager, frankly.
Yeah.
But she never would have known that those positions existed, right? If she hadn't done this work. 3 of the youth Dean and I are very confident will go on to do something in this field. One of them, we actually were able to connect with the city manager in Newburgh. Their public works department has a youth hire program and they were hiring. And so we made the connection for him to have an interview with them. He actually lives in the city of Newburgh. One of the youth who struggles a little bit with health and mobility said that his favorite
Yeah.
activity was shoveling rock. I couldn't believe it. And I said, really, that's surprising. Surprising anybody would like shoveling rock, Michael. And he said, it just made me feel like I was doing something, like doing something good and valuable. And all of them were so proud that they were pouring
Oh,
sidewalk in this community.
it was
It was
huge.
pretty phenomenal. Yeah. So we could go on and on about it. It was pretty exciting.
Roberta asked a question about the impact of weather, and the weather did impact a few of our pour days. So we had things prepped and inspected and ready to go, but weather didn't allow. And this project was not a high priority for some of the concrete companies that would deliver the concrete, or the cement, excuse me. So we had to wait sometimes a few days to get material between
Yeah.
weather and delivery times.
And that did cause us to go further into November than we had hoped, which
Yeah.
then brought us up against the fall weather. But I will say that's a great prompt though, Roberta, because we like to start project right in the spring. We'd like to start in early summer. We had planned on doing that with this project. We had some factors that played in that pushed it out a little ways, but we were hoping to have it done by the end of September.
Yeah.
And it just, the whole timeline got moved and then it got extended a little bit. So thank you for that.
But it's done
So
now.
it's done now. So this is a picture of the finished first pour. And as Dean was mentioning, they had to raise the utility cover. They had to go around utility poles. This piece of sidewalk actually butts up against a property that has cement poured to the sidewalk that, as you can see, was kind of cracked and breaking, and they had to figure out how to deal with that. They put in the ADA rumble strips. They were marrying it into the asphalt of the road. So there was just a lot of technical components that the youth got to experience, and that was
And
pretty
then
cool.
the other side that we don't see goes across the driveway.
Yeah.
So that is a bigger, thicker pour.
Yeah. And you'll see here on the sign, these are all the partners, including the donors that showed up for this particular project. And we made sure to give them lots of love and lots of shout outs and put their names on the signs and remind everyone that it would not have come together had it not been for everyone. So what does the future look like? I'm going to keep us moving forward here. What does the future look like? Well, we're building it out. One of the things that we have done, and I'm glad to have Roberta Moore here on the call with us, good to see you, Roberta, is that we had Willamette University students reach out to us. And we get that every once in a while, as probably some of the rest of you do, right? Our higher ed partners will reach out and say, we've got some really talented students that are in a senior project. They're in senior project mode, right? And they need a project to work on. And we said, well, we've got this amazing program, but we could really use some help building out some templates so that we can work with folks like you to say, here's a starting point, right? Like we're here, we're partners for you. But if you said, hey, we want to kind of lead this ourselves and we want to take it on and we have these partners locally and you guys pop in and help us here and there, but like we'd like to move forward with this, that we have some tools for you. So the folks here from Willamette University worked with us to build out a tool set. Some of those tools that they've included is a timeline model, a cost model, a progress report so that you can communicate with all of your partners what's going on, marketing and outreach flyer, a partner agreement, and a youth recruitment flyer. We have those assets. We're happy to show them to you all, but we knew it would take a lot of time if we went through them individually. But I just want to let you know that we do have a toolkit. We're so grateful for the folks, the partners, and the students at Willamette University because Dean and I just didn't have enough like mental bandwidth to pull it all together. And we're so grateful that their youthful energy and experience contributed to the benefit of this program. So thank you.
They also designed the logo that you see on all these slides, the
Yeah,
Sidewalk project, the program that looks like concrete. Love that.
very cute. And they also helped us to start diving into this next component, which is to solidify an education and certification program. So when we had the project in the City of Independence, the Construction Alliance actually put together a certificate for the youth that was industry developed, industry recognized, so that when the youth went through the program, if they were issued this certificate, they could take it to any employer in the region, any construction employer, and they would see it as a valid training program. We weren't able to get that up and going again in time for the 2025 launch in Carlton, but we are diving back in to make sure that we get a certification program and additional training components, education and training components built into the program. We're doing that currently in partnership with the Construction Alliance once again, and I believe we have our partner from the Oregon Concrete and Aggregate Producers Association on the call here, OCAPA. They actually do a lot of the certificate program management for the concrete and aggregate industry, and they're located in our region, right? So we're like, hey, let's partner with them and make sure that as the youth go through the program, they might be able to walk away with some of these certificates that make them almost impossible to employ. That's our goal. I also want to note that this program was put together as a sidewalk program, as a concrete construction sidewalk program, because that's what the partners at the time decided made sense. It doesn't have to be that. And I don't want to go down all the rabbit holes, but we can see this model that has been created with sort of the funding and support mechanisms that are in place in our region could support a commercial painting program, for example, right? So if you have a downtown that needs facade improvement, and you have a contractor in your region especially that you think would love to take this on, and maybe they're a commercial painter and you want to figure out how to fund, a facade improvement on 3 buildings in your downtown core, there might be an opportunity to do something like that. Or maybe you want to refresh your local food bank, or some other nonprofit entity or program. There might be space for that. And so we want you to be thinking about what could that look like, and are happy to walk through it with you. All right, so what is the secret sauce? I told you we started putting together the ingredient list for the secret sauce. This is how we currently see it. You need to have a committed municipal or nonprofit partner with a qualifying community benefit project. So this is not something that we would be able to work with an independent business to do, to build an expansion onto their building, right? It doesn't qualify. It needs to be a community benefit, either working within a community, or it needs to be with a nonprofit. That's how we can ensure that the funding will fit and that the nonprofit entity partners, that it qualifies for them to participate. So it also cannot just strictly be a public works project, right? There has to be community benefit here. So you got to have the committed partner with a qualifying project. You have to have a licensed, capable, and willing contractor of record that has the type of expertise that project requires. You need to have a project manager. I mentioned this before. In this project, SEDCOR acted as the project manager. We've been in conversation, for example, with Michelle at the Willamette Heritage Center. I think I saw you on here. She might not be on here anymore. So we were having a conversation with the Willamette Heritage Center saying, hey, could this project qualify? Well, they have a contractor that is doing quite a bit of work. And so we said, well, if that contractor wants to serve as the project manager, because they are already serving as the project manager for your larger project, that could work, right? So a project manager can be within any entity or a separate entity, but you definitely need to have someone keeping everyone on track. You need the fiscal agent. In this instance, it was Willamette Workforce Partnership. We also have the Strategic Economic Development Foundation in the region that could sponsor these types of projects. There's several different nonprofit entities that could be that partner. So happy to talk through what that could look like. You also need, obviously, the funding and donations to pull it off. It's not hard to get industry donations for projects like this. It's just a matter of having the relationships, making the ask, being really clear about what the project is. If it's qualifying and you have all those other partners there, things tend to come together. All right. So we got to the end of our speaking, and I was pretty close. We're about 50 minutes.
Not
So I
bad.
think, yeah, we have had Noreen on the call here and Trina, who have been trying to make sure that they're tracking the questions. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. After we get through questions, we'll open it up for a little bit more dialogue, and you're welcome to come on if you want to talk at some point. Go ahead and put your camera back on. But Dean, as folks are thinking about their questions, I'm
Yeah.
curious if you had some comments regarding how have you ever worked with ODOT? What are your thoughts with a project that is separated by the highway? I know that you've shared some concerns about doing projects that are along a highway before. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, yeah, there's a number of concerns. I think that, number one is safety for the youth and the contractors. Also, when it's a job that is ODOT adjacent, it becomes public, usually publicly funded, which throws a whole bunch of different rules into it. The capability of managing something like that would be challenging. The capability of having kids on a project like that would be challenging. I would encourage these to be also smaller. So those projects are large and they take a long time typically. So a smaller project with small bites that can be used the youth can be taught to do the work on a small project much easier than they can a big one. So that's my encouragement. Try to avoid those big ODOT or other publicly funded projects.
Yeah, good call. Noreen, were there any other questions in the chat we missed?
Other than that, Kale from Sheridan just asked, other than sidewalks, what other projects would this program be able to do?
Yes, well, Kale, I have all kinds of ideas. So the one that I shared, the sort of commercial painting, the painting project is one that I've really married myself to because I can just see it and I see some partners who I think would be really interested in it. But it also got me thinking about several of our communities have very small parks, right? Sort of like right in their downtown area. And quite a few of them are looking to build like a little gazebo or something, right? Some sort of a structure or something like that, just or do some improvements in the park. I can see an opportunity for something like that, right? So that might be wood framing or some other type of construction. I don't see it being anything that requires the hands-on experience to already have a certification. So I don't see anything like electrical work
No.
or plumbing work, right? That's going to be a youth. We could have something that involves those things and have a contractor do that work, but it's got to be something that doesn't have those components generally. So facade
Along those, oh, go
improvement,
ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, facade improvement or like smaller sort of construction type projects I could see.
There's also opportunities that would be adjacent to this, not quite as big, but like Jess just asked about park benches. Sure. I
Oh,
think that one aligns well to partner with the local high school and middle school and just have somebody that kind of can help coordinate that. Most schools want to do work, but they don't have, if they have the tools, they don't have the budget for the materials.
mhm.
So there's where the community piece comes in. Get some donations together to buy the materials to beautify the park, build them in the shop, put the finish on them, and take them out there and bring the community together to celebrate that.
Yeah. So I see the question on there about planter boxes and things like that. So I'm sure that many of you have high schools in your community that have career tech or CTE type programming, right? So they have like wood shop, or they've got some sort of class like that, and maybe they're already doing that sort of stuff. That might be the best place to go for that. When I think about beautification and planter boxes, the build could be done through a program like this, could also be done through a local CTE program, but it would be the long-term ongoing maintenance of those boxes that I don't see the youth program supporting, right? Because these youth come in, they get work experience, they get paid, and then hopefully they get placed in a long-term job. But I don't think that's a question you were asking. I just wanted to clarify that. I also want to point out that the most of the sidewalk work that has been done, right, has been flat work
Yes.
through this project. So it's, you start talking about curb and gutter and water flow, and like if it's a project that needs to be heavily engineered, I've talked to some of the municipalities about that before too. If it's still community benefit, but it's still a project that needs to be heavily engineered, and it's kind of in the borderline of like, is it a public works project or is it a community benefit project? But it's a lot of engineering. That one of the ways the city could show up is to do the engineering, right? So
For sure. And the complexity of the project matters as well, particularly when you're teaching youth how to do something. How long is this project? Like, for instance, you mentioned the ODOT project may not be appropriate. Curb and gutter adds a considerable amount of complexity to a sidewalk.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a question about downtown corridor walking trails. I think that could be a great fit,
Yeah.
right? That's a great fit.
And
And
Roberta's asked, go ahead.
yeah, currently, Roberta, we are trying to sort of kickstart and begin growing the program. So we're mostly focused right now in Yamhill and Marion counties. We are open to Polk County for sure. We're open to Lynn County because that's the region that we and Willamette Workforce Partnership cover. So anything outside of that, we wouldn't necessarily be able to support, but we would be happy to share the program with partners outside of our region and encourage them to adopt it and supporting them in doing so. Ms. Renata, I saw you come on screen, and I'm curious if you had anything that you wanted to talk through, a potential project or questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I've been tracking this program for some time, and I think it's really important. I want to get involved. I have some ideas where the city is updating our ADA transition plan right now. So we're mapping and inventorying our sidewalks and where those gaps are. So I think that project will lead very nicely into this conversation we're having if we want to start the sidewalk program and are able to put it together and find a contractor. I think the contractor I saw the name of earlier is a contractor of record in our community already, and we have the sidewalk 50/50 program. So we've got a lot of pieces already together, which is really nice. And we want to make sure that we're using, we have limited funds for sidewalk and ADA ramp replacement right now. And the conversation is, what we're allocating, how we prioritize that as part of that transition plan. So when we have that guidance from this planning work, we may be getting additional dollars, but then that will kind of be our outreach to the community. I have ideas, but I'm going to pose a question. I don't mean to put you all on the spot, Dean and Abhishek, but I am curious when you mentioned the cost model. As public servants, we have to be fiscally responsible with our public dollars. And so there was mention of Carlton providing $24,000 cash and then 50,000 private donations. So I guess that doesn't count. But like, have you modeled, and I didn't catch, was it 800 feet or 8 blocks? What doesn't matter, but like, it had the city gone out and just done that commercial downtown core project, versus what they invested. And obviously there's the skills training, there's the public service, there's the city kind of getting this done. I'm putting all of that aside. Like, these projects are extremely important for communities and the job training, but have you done a comparison of costs and how much kind of public dollars are invested versus had this just been paid for by the city?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we haven't done the full build out cost model comparison. We did a lot of we went through a lot of conversation with the city of Carlton. I also will share that in this 800, it's about 820 lineal feet of sidewalk. Considering our total potential bank, if you will, was $74,000. We did not spend all of that money on the project. We're looking at what the opportunities might be for a second project. And so we know that the benefit is greater, right? The cost is lower generally and benefit greater than it just being a direct community project. But I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm pretty certain that we could either work some of that out with Shannon to come up with something that we can share with you. I am 100% certain that you and I could sit down and walk
Yep.
through our cost model document and make that comparison for your community and your specific project at any point. We had done some initial analysis with Shannon, and it was clear that the benefit was greater because the amount of donation of material and time and labor and community donation that we received, the city never would have been able to do that project for that cost, even just their own labor.
And no surprise, but it just needs to be part of kind of that pitch and why we're doing it and all of that. So ideas for, I mentioned the ADA transition plan, sidewalk inventory. We have a facade renewal program. I think one of the biggest projects I'm working on and largest concerns for North Marion County and Woodburn is leading, but we will be working with all of our communities in responding to this, and being that we are in the Willamette Valley and Marion County is emerald ash borer, and our certifications and nurseries. Like, I'm trying to figure out, is there an opportunity for training of skills training for youth, for arborists, tree classifications, that type of thing. So for those that might not be familiar, the emerald ash borer has been identified in Marion County. We'll be losing a lot of ash trees. We'll be having to inventory, take them down, but there's a lot of replanting opportunities as well. So bringing in our nursery association, but we're building trails, along these corridors as well. So I think and it's if Woodburn leads, or a community in North Marion or a region leads, obviously all of our region will be impacted, and we can replicate it for smaller communities as well.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that with you, Renata. The certification piece is pretty key in terms of getting support for something like that. I mean, because I can see what you're trying to envision. I think Kira is on the call here, Kira Johnson from the Oregon Concrete and Aggregate Producers Association. One of the reasons we're working with them so closely is because they are essentially the certifying entity for required training and education and certifications that that industry needs to have. And so we want to get those in the youth's hand as a value proposition, another value proposition for going through the program. We also believe that we can secure private donation to fund that component of it. So one of the things I'd be thinking about in this project that's very different that you're thinking of is, what would the certifications be that the youth might be able to achieve? And how do we get that to them? Because that would probably shore up some of the funding support to make a program like that work. Yeah, thank you for your questions. T. Morones, I'm not saying that right.
That's okay. My name's Tony Morones. I'm the current mayor of our bustling metropolis in Idana, Oregon, just above Detroit Lake.
Loved Idana.
160 people. I'd asked the question regarding ODOT. Our only downtown is about 4 buildings and is separated by Highway 22. We've been working with ODOT for many, many years, trying to establish and get sidewalks to get people to acknowledge that there's actually a town there when they drive through Highway 22. And so your comments about it being potentially a public project, I understand the safety issue. Is there a process for that other than just working with ODOT and anybody's experience on this forum, because ODOT can be very challenging, to put it lightly. And if not, we do have a grant from the Opal Creek fire that happened for non-shovel ready projects for vision planning for the city that we are working with Marion County. That's about $125,000 grant. Through that process, if the highway project was a hard no, and it's actually one of our most desired projects to connect one side of the city, the only side of the city, with the residential downtown. Could we identify, if we identified other areas, because we have no sidewalks in the community anywhere, what's the process at that point in engaging or, with you folks?
Yeah,
I think
great.
the first step is let's identify what you want to do and let's sit down and talk about it. Let's get
Yeah.
out there, come out to Idana and lay eyes on what you think you want to do as a community, and then imagine the possibilities. And then we'll find out who we got to talk to.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
one of a great community benefit component is like safety, right? So we have concerns about working on highway. We have concerns about partnership with ODOT. It's not a hard no.
Right.
So like Dean said, let's look at the project. You guys do need sidewalks out there, and I bet you need safe sidewalks for travel to school, right? Safe sidewalks for travel to grocery, and even if there's a component of it that this program could most comfortably support, but that somehow encourages the other component to get completed because we've now taken on this piece, well, then we kind of braid it in, right? But I agree with Dean. Let's look at that together and say what could work, what could fit, because it's not a hard no.
Yeah.
Great. I
Another thing would
appreciate
be a
that.
hard no is a roof.
Yeah.
I'm not putting kids on a roof.
We finally have them surveying to actually put in a flashing light and a crosswalk across the highway. And so that's
nice.
why I'm bringing it up, that maybe there is a way to dovetail some sort of a project. And because we have absolutely nothing, city council, myself, and the majority of the community is open to anything,
Yeah.
really. And
And they-
again, because we're very small, we have I'd say basically not a lot of money, but we do have people that know how to fundraise and grant write. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And if we can work with ODOT, I don't know how reasonable this is because I am ever the optimist and I refuse to be anything other than that. But if we could work with ODOT and they say, we're going to be doing this work at this time, and because we're doing this work at this time, we're going to manage the highway traffic, and we say, great, we're going to jump in and do this work in conjunction because you're managing traffic.
Yeah.
Maybe we could figure that out, and we'd be open to talking through that.
I'd love to really have you guys be able to schedule time to have you up and show you and kind of vision cast. And
Great.
we do have a project manager that I've been in contact with ODOT
Wonderful.
for that project that I can engage as well. So thank you. I see
Wonderful.
some other hands raised.
Shoot me an email and we'll
Okay.
follow up.
I will.
All right, Kim, I think you were next.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Kim Copeland. I have a statewide focus on vocational rehabilitation's workforce team. And I've dropped some information into the chat. Dean and I go way back. And this is so very exciting. I just was hoping, do you have the ability to explain a little bit more about the WIOA funding that was involved? Because of course that piques my interest. VR is a WIOA partner, and wondering, maybe that's too much to go into here, but can you give me a high level on what kind of funding was available, how you got your hands on it, how much?
Well,
Anything?
we can absolutely, it's pretty short. I mean,
Okay.
we're the WIOA conduit for youth services, right? So in the youth services contract world, they get to provide pay to the youth for this work, as well as some wraparound resources for the youth. So the hard hats, the boots, that sort of thing. Some of the things we bought to reuse, but the things that were specifically for each kid, they get to keep if they completed.
Right. Okay.
So that's all WIOA money. And for those that don't know, WIOA is Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It's a federal act from the Department of Labor that manages the work that we do to invest in the workforce. So you also have some of those funds And I don't know your section of the law, but I would imagine that some of that stuff still applies.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah. Renata, I saw that your hand was up. You may have just had some input for Mayor Morones.
Yep, and I put it in the chat.
Oh, great. Great. All right. Did we miss any other questions, Noreen or Trina?
I don't think so.
Let me clarify something. Mayor, you had asked about contact information. Noreen, are you sending that out with a follow-up to everybody who attends with our contact information?
Yeah, I'll be sending like the recap as well, like the video afterwards. So everybody will have the recording and then, so I'll be sending that afterwards for everybody
Okay.
who's registered.
Yeah,
Awesome.
there's our, whoop.
And you'll have everybody's contact. So you'll have Dean's contact as well as Abishai's.
Yep, and there it is one more time in case
Yeah.
you want to capture that. But well, wonderful. Thank you. Were there any last questions or anybody want to walk through anything else? All right. Well, because we were so efficient, you have bought back 17 minutes of your day, and I expect you'll do something amazing with it. Thank you all again for being here today. We really appreciate your time. Feel free to follow up with me first if you have any questions, and Dean second if I don't get back to you in a timely manner, or if it's, in Kim's case, maybe more specific to WIOA funding or some component that would only be managed by Willamette Workforce Partnership. I really appreciate you all coming today. Thank you for your input, for your contributions, and I look forward to working with you on talking through your projects. So
Thank you.
until we meet again, take care.
Take care, everybody.